Period. We are saved by grace.
Yep.
Period. Don't fuck my word up. I will fuck you up.
So before I was a YouTuber, before I was a guitar teacher, before I was any of these things that I am now, I was pretty much homeless and I had no real direction. I was never into drugs or drinking or anything like that. It's just a series of bad events, really, and I'll give you guys that story pretty soon. But this is actual footage of me back when I was homeless, which is kind of weird to look at. This is about 10, 11 years ago or so. I have this footage because a church was wanting to talk about, my story and, pretty much a story about the homeless in general in the community. And so they filmed me kind of walking around my usual areas. They also got some footage of me playing guitar I'll show you in a second. But it's really cringy because, I didn't get a lot of practice and I didn't have an amp back then and I was homeless, so my playing was really choppy. Alright, so I don't really know how to start this video off. I guess I'll just start with the beginning and work my way towards the current time, which is now. So I'm sure I'm going to get some comments like, Lester, why are you, talking about this stuff? Why are you making the YouTube video on this? Isn't this a bit personal? Yeah, it is a bit personal, but I wanted to be real with you guys. I wanted to be honest with you guys. I wanted to give you a deeper look at me as a person, to let you know who I am. Because right now you just know me as a guitar player that just posts silly covers and memes once in a while, and I wanted to give you guys more depth than that. Like, this is who I am, this is what I'm going through, or what I've been through. And it's not only helpful for me in my own personal therapy of, coming to terms with things, but I think it's also helpful for you guys, or, for some of you guys out there that may have gone through similar things. It's like, hey, you're not alone. I'm going through similar things that maybe you went through. We're all going through something together. And it's a way for me to feel like I'm connecting with you guys as a family or community, to let you know that, again, you're not alone. I was born in a pretty, what I guess I would consider kind of a normal family. It was dysfunctional, but I think most families are to a certain degree. My father was always a decent guy when I was a kid, and, he's always working hard. And my mother, she meant well, but she suffered from a severe case of bipolar disorder. Most of the time she was, unmedicated, so it was very unstable, and you weren't really sure what mood you were going to get on what day. Now, if you're not familiar with bipolar disorder, schizoaffective disorder, things like that, there's a lot to it, People can have manic episodes. They can be, lethargic and depressed. They can be hostile, violent. Just kind of depends. And so my mother would have these swings where they could last from days to weeks to months. To give you an example of what that was like growing up, she had, certain obsessions and beliefs that were not real, delusions and whatnot. And one of those delusions was about Kurt Cobain. She was a very, very big Nirvana fan, and she loved Kurt Cobain. She thought he was, he had some kind of connection to Jesus, or he was Jesus reincarnated. And so we had pretty much every collectible in our house of Kurt Cobain's. We had his signature guitar, which nobody knew how to play. We went to actual credit card debt for that, by the way. We had Kurt Cobain pictures on the wall of him as a kid. We had, his home videos, the VHS tapes, memorabilia, his own spoons and everything. It's a little weird. So, I grew up thinking that was normal. I didn't really know who Nirvana or Kurt Cobain was. It was all new for me. Now, besides the delusions and the obsessions, she would also have these manic episodes that would last for days at a time. If you've ever been around somebody that has, been on drugs like methamphetamine, how they can stay up for hours at a time without any sleep, just very wiry, very manic, very, agitated or irritable, or, it could be the exact opposite, euphoric. And she was very much so like that, just naturally without the drugs. Unfortunately, she was somebody that, tried to self-medicate over the years with, alcoholism. Now, at the time, growing up around this was very confusing. It was very unstable. Things could be violent. They could be, scary. I felt a lot of anxiety and fear as a kid. I just assumed that was normal. I thought everybody went through things like this. And, as a kid, you don't know any better. You don't realize what's dysfunctional and what's not. My mom kind of wanted to help in her way, so she wanted to homeschool me. And that really didn't go well. As you can imagine, somebody that's, having psychosis be your teacher, that's, unmedicated, it's really not a good time. Eventually, I was able to get back into public school. This is probably around 5th grade, I believe. And from that point on, things just kind of got worse. I got into fights at school. I got bullied. I got jumped multiple times. And it was just very, very unpleasant. I didn't really have any friends. I didn't really have any, acquaintances. Going to school was just, a lot of stress for me. I even started skipping school and, getting bad grades because of everything going on. Okay, so moving on. At this point, my parents got separated. They got a divorce. And due to custody issues and everything, I ended up with my mother. And we lived in this trailer park from, I was about the age of, I think, 11 or 12 until about the age of 16. And things definitely got worse. I didn't see my dad as often. He was kind of in and out of my life for a number of years. And my mother was definitely going downhill in her health. Now, living with my mother in that trailer park was very difficult. But what made it harder was the fact that we were always hungry, thirsty. It was just we were very poor. Sometimes we go days without eating and we just had water. And sometimes it was even clean water. Other times, we'd have top ramen for dinner, and that was pretty much the only food you had that day, and you were lucky if you got that. This went on for years, again, until I was about, 16 years old. So we're looking at 5-6 years around there. And it was very difficult. There was many times I remember, standing up and then passing out on the floor because, I haven't eaten or drank any water. There's times I remember I thought I was having a heat stroke because I didn't have, enough clean water. There's just, a lot of memories I have of that felt awful, the hunger, pain, and everything. I had a couple stepdads. They're pretty nice guys. They did their best to try to help me out. Unfortunately, they were both recovering addicts as well. So they would, relapse and then they were gone. So it was short-lived, but they did show me a couple things that, stayed with me over the years. In fact, one of my stepdads actually showed me how to play guitar. That was my first introduction into music. And we had this really beat up, janky-looking acoustic guitar with the strings flying off the fretboard, covered in rust. Real nasty smelling. I'm sure you have one in your house or in your lifetime you've seen like that. Now, around the age of 13, kind of going into 14, I lost vision in my right eye due to some unfortunate circumstances and head trauma and whatnot. I had developed retinal detachment. I didn't know I had retinal detachment in both eyes until one morning I woke up and I was just completely blind in my right eye. So you can imagine it was a little scary at first. Now, luckily, I was able to get my left eye fixed before it ended up like my right eye. I had invasive surgery where they put a gas bubble in your eye. I forget the name of it, but it pretty much pushes against the retina and keeps it so it can heal in place. Now, everything kind of imploded and blew up when my mother had her worst ever psychosis. It was so bad. She was in this manic stage where she was, awake for about a week straight. In this time period, she'd be yelling at the neighbors, screaming at the top of her lungs all day and night, pouring water on herself, baptizing herself in the trees. She'd be playing with Scrabble, saying she's talking to God, just causing a lot of mischief and, getting the cops called quite often. Now, I forgot to mention something. I actually slept in the car. I never slept in the trailer because the trailer was so small and there was just so much stuff in there. My mom was a hoarder, so I never slept in the trailer. I slept outside in the car, which was way more comfortable because there was no room for me in the trailer. So I was always just kind of chilling in the back seat with my little sleeping bag. This was super helpful and super important because if I didn't have that car to hide in, I'm not exactly sure what would have happened. I remember waking up a few times during that period when my mother was having her episode and she was, staring at me while I was sleeping, in her manic stage or psychosis. And this went on for about a week straight. I didn't get much sleep. I didn't, we're still not eating or anything. We're not, staying hydrated. And eventually the cops, took her. And I'll never forget that day because when she was being arrested, she was trying to stab a cop with this big old knife she had outside. And the cop got her, detained her, got the knife away and everything. And I remember her yelling at me to kill him. She's like, kill the pig, Lester, kill the pig. And, of course I didn't do that. I was just happy they're getting her gone. And, of course, in the background, the cop had Alice in Chains playing on full blast. It was Man in a Box. So every time I hear that song, I always visualize that when he took my mom and chucked her in the back of the police car. Kind of a silly memory. So because of this, everything kind of collapsed for me. Everything went downhill. I was having a lot of anxiety. I was having, anger issues, a lot of anger issues, actually. I had to work on that. And basically, I ended up homeless. Is, the long-winded way of going about it. Now, it wasn't until later in life when I realized that we were starving for no reason, because my mother, was getting money from the government, food stamps and whatnot, and she wasn't using them on food, but instead selling them so she could have cash for her pain pills. And that's something that really took me a while to kind of forgive. Even now, I'm still a little frustrated, just talking about it, because that's a lot of years of, I guess you'd call that a form of abuse, not eating. All right, so at this point, I became homeless. I had nowhere to go. I had no one to turn to. I had nobody to rely on for help. I was homeless from the age of 16, 17, up until the age of probably 21, 22. Being homeless was definitely one of the hardest things I ever went through in my life. It was very difficult, and for those that haven't been through it, it's hard to really describe, but to feel completely isolated and alone, it breaks you down physically, it breaks you down mentally, it breaks you down spiritually. It makes you feel very low. Go. Now, there was a shelter you could sleep at. You had to be there at 6 o'clock, okay? You had to listen to the preaching. They fed you this kind of weird-looking food that didn't look like food. It's kind of like slop. They rushed you into these showers, which had no stalls. There was no curtains. There was no privacy. There's just a bunch of naked dudes. There's all these tall guys from prison showering next to me, this little teenage guy. Then they put you in these big rooms full of multiple bunk beds where people are sleeping literally, like military, just side by side, and hundreds of people. Now, once 4 in the morning came along, this guy would come in, he'd turn the lights on, start banging the pan, start screaming at everybody to get up, get out, get your crap. You have until 4:30 to get downstairs, which they give you like this little, I guess you call it porridge, breakfast type thing. And they kick you out, and you're pretty much on your own around 4:45, 4:50 a.m. Now, obviously, a lot happened in this town and at this shelter, and just in general, my first time being homeless, right? But I'm going to break down 2 stories for you that I remember the most from that experience. So one evening, I remember getting out of the shower, drying myself off, when this guy came up to me. He's about 6'4", 6'5". They called him Big Ed. He was really big, kind of meaty, heavy-set guy. Before I could even realize what's happening, he rushes into me, slams me into a wall, lifts me up with one hand. He's choking me in midair. Luckily, a few of the other guys there were able to get him off me and kind of calm him down a bit. But at that moment, I was terrified. I thought I was going to die. That following morning, I went downstairs. It's 4:40 in the morning. We're all rushing to get our breakfast in these long tables in the cafeteria or the hall. I'm eating my breakfast, and I look up from my plate to see a guy walk by, take a fork, and stab another guy in the neck. And I just remember seeing the guy holding his neck, screaming, and I remember the blood just kind of squirting out, and I even remember the sound it made. It was horrible. So after everything, I decided I needed to move somewhere else to be homeless. I thought, this town is too dangerous. I'm going to die in this town. So I decided to go be homeless in my hometown. I thought, that's got to be a lot better than here. It's something, and I need some kind of change, or I'm going to go crazy. So at this point, I got really long hair. I'm living my life. I have a leather jacket. I got my guitar on my shoulder. I'm walking around town, just kind of doing my thing, listening to my music, recycling, trying to find, odd jobs I can do, working on fields or just whatever, just to make some money so I could eat, just even if it's just $5. It's like I buy some Jack in a Box or something like that. That was my daily goal. Just make $5 and I can get at least some tacos or whatever. Again, I never drank, never did any drugs or anything. I was never even a smoker. I just didn't want to mess with any of that, considering how my parents had, past addiction issues. There was a shelter, but it was only open from like, I think January to February or something like that, or February to March. So you're pretty much on your own for the rest of the year. Like, just sleeping outside, find a bush or find, behind a building, and don't get caught by the police. Don't get jumped or robbed or anything, which I did get a couple times, and I'll talk about that as well. But yeah, it was very, very difficult because you had to figure out a good sleeping spot away from everybody. And yeah, I did that for years. But when I was first homeless out here in this town, right, I came from a different town being homeless. This was the safest place I could find until I could find my own secluded away from people. So, I slept over here in this corner several times for months. In the wintertime, it was freezing. We'd have rain coming down. It was first come, first serve. So, if somebody took that spot, you're going to sleep over here, or there, wherever. And I was sleeping even right here, just rain coming down, and my sleeping bag is being soaked. The last day that I stayed there, I was robbed at gunpoint. A few other people were also robbed at gunpoint that were staying in that same location. Like I said, other homeless people would stay in that same area, just depending on the night. So this truck comes in, and a bunch of guys come out. They start screaming. They start pulling out guns. They're shaking it in everybody's face. I remember, it was me kicking my sleeping bag. I'm waking up and I'm looking, and there's this gun in my face, and this guy's telling me, give me what you got. What do you got, bro? What's in the bag? Just give me what you got. And, I was just so out of it. I didn't know what was happening. People are going through my things. They're shaking me down. I was terrified. I woke up thinking, maybe this is the day I die. After robbing everybody, they got back in the truck and they left immediately. And needless to say, I found a new place to sleep from then on. Now, at this point, I haven't seen my parents in years. I'm not sure where my mom's at. I haven't seen my dad in years. I'm not sure where he's at. We're not in contact at all. Nobody's reached out to me. And I run across my mom on accident in this town I moved into. Funny how that works. And she's also homeless, living out of her car. Now, I wasn't happy to see her, but I wasn't angry to see her either. We were never really that close. And then after everything that happened, you could probably imagine it didn't help the situation. I would just see her, once a day to ask if she was okay, if she needed anything, if she needed food or water or whatever, just because I felt like it was the right thing to do. So I'm living my life. I'm walking around. I'm homeless. I'm doing my thing, trying to make the best out of it, and the shelter opens up, right? It's finally time for the shelter, that 1 to 2 month period, or whatever it was. And I remember going to eat at the line, right? All the homeless people get in a line, you wait, and the people serving us were from a church, right? The pastor's there with his wife, and he sees me, and he double looks, and he's like, "Hey, I've seen you before." And I said, "You have?" I said, "Oh God, that's not a good sign." He's like, "Yeah, you're that cool guy that walks around with the leather jacket and the guitar on your shoulder. I see you walk by my office like every day downtown." And I remember I had a good laugh. I thought, "You think I'm cool? Okay." But, I said, "Okay, yeah, that's me." And he's like, "Hey, I might have a job for you." He's like, "Do you play that guitar?" And I said, "Yeah, I mess around, He's like, "Okay, well, come by the office. We'll do a little audition and see if you can, show me what you got." So the next day I went down there and I met up with him at his office. We plugged in, I jammed out, and they pretty much were like, "Wow, this guy plays pretty good. We want you to, play at our church, and we're going to pay you to do it." So that was really cool. I didn't expect all that. I thought, wow, I get to play in front of people and I get money? Double win. Now, this was a really positive experience for me. I mean, not only did it give me money, but it also gave me confidence, and it made me feel more human, because these people looked at me like a human being. More often than not, when you're homeless, people look at you like you're disgusting or you're below them. People judge you. They think you're, definitely on drugs, or you're drinking, or there's something wrong with you. But these people were so different, and they were so kind and welcoming. I mean, they trusted me, and they gave me a job, not even knowing anything about me. Now, as time went on, my mom eventually found out about the church, and she wanted to come. I was really skeptical about having her there, and I really, in a way, didn't want her to be there. When my mother wasn't medicated, she was very confrontational, very hostile, and she would be very delusional, so she would pick fights over nothing. So one Sunday morning, my mom came to church, and as soon as I saw her sitting there, I was worried. I didn't know what was going to happen. I knew she was in a mood, so to speak. Now, as I expected, in the middle of service, my mother lost her cool and kind of had a freak out. So she lost her cool in the middle of the sermon. The pastor said, "The Bible never says that we are sinners saved by grace." And that pretty much set her off. So because of this, she made a pretty big scene, was very confrontational, was very vulgar to the pastor and the church. I tried to help, de-escalate the situation. It didn't work so well, of course. And eventually, we were able to kind of get her out of the building. And from that day forward, she was on a warpath against the church, specifically the pastor, who, I was very good friends with at the time. All right, guys, so I'm going to show you a few videos right now of that time period when my mother was very confrontational with the church. Now, before I show you these, I just want to say again, I'm not doing this to bash my mother. I'm not doing this to make her look bad. It's nothing like that. This has really more to do with me showing you guys what I went through in my life, what I had to deal with, and also hopefully bringing awareness and insight to those that are suffering from mental illness. It is a real thing. Bipolar disorder is no joke. Schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, these all are things that are very real, and people do suffer a great deal.
Hungry? I'm homeless. No. Just fix the place. Watch your arm, bro. Fucking face. Stop it. You're being petty. It's for my dog.
Stacy, do I need to call?
Fuck these people. Fuck you.
They're right here. Debbie, we don't need that. Seriously, Debbie, we don't need that.
I know you don't.
But all this food, you just wasted all this, and you know what? That's not very Christ-like of you. Okay, Debbie, stop it.
I'll take what I fucking want. I'm hungry, bitch.
Stop.
No, you gotta stop. You gotta stop. You has to stop.
No, don't. I get Arabic. I get fucking German. I get a lot
Okay, but Kathy didn't do anything to you, okay?
Go to hell. Fuck you. Period. We are saved by grace.
Yep.
Period. Don't fuck my word up. I will fuck you up.
Okay, here's my question. Are you going to continue coming in on Sundays?
You know this better than I do.
It's
You
just
know
a
this better
question.
than I do. 1 Corinthians 5:5. Jeremiah says this: a man's word is his oracle. You go figure it out.
No. Are you going
A
to
man's word is his oracle.
Are you
1
con-
Corinthians 5:5.
Are you gonna
1 Corinthians 5:5.
Are you going to continue coming back? I need an answer to that, Debbie. Because until we have our conversation, then I can't allow you to come back. That's all right. She's coming.
Come back if I want. It's a public building.
No, that's not actually true.
No, it's a public building.
No,
It's a public building.
in the
You
private
gotta go-
set,
you
Debbie.
gotta go back and learn your hands and
Debbie,
relearn
in the
your
private
scripture.
setting of us renting that room.
I pray you into the hands of Satan. 1 Corinthians 5:5. You can go.
You're welcome
team
to
up
do
with
that.
Paul. Paul was not Jesus. You need to get this.
Debbie, the next time.
Paul's message was religion. Paul's message was Jesus. Jesus' message wasn't Jesus.
If
That's
you
all I
sh-
have to say to you.
Okay.
And that's more than I was going to.
if you
Stop.
show, no, I'm not
Stop.
gonna, no,
You
I'm not
have
stopping.
No respect for women
I'm not
at
stopping.
all. None.
Now, eventually I got a job working at a grocery store. Things were looking pretty good. I had a girlfriend at an apartment. Things were kind of looking up for me for the first time there. Unfortunately, things did take another turn. My girlfriend did leave. My mother got really sick with cancer, and so I had to look after her. She did pass away. And then at this point, with everything going on, I had kind of a little emotional breakdown, and I pretty much lost my job. So basically, after all that happened, I was homeless again, and I felt like I was back at square one, like I didn't move anywhere. So I'm doing my best every day to stay motivated, stay positive, you know, do things in the community, try to apply for work, try to better myself in some way so I can get out of the situation. And in that process, I met some really, really nice people that I made some really good friends with along the way. You know, people that helped me out by offering me work or letting me stay on their couch once in a while. You know, the pastor included would let me stay on his couch once in a while. And, you know, I was always grateful for that when I needed it. Now, this eventually set me up with a guy that was making a band, right? He was a singer, and he wanted some people to play with him so they can go, you know, play the bar scene and make a few bucks. And of course, I was super interested. You know, I was very excited to make some money and play some bars. Now keep in mind, there's quite a lot of stories I'm not telling you in between because I feel like it would just take too long. This video is already long enough and I just want to kind of skim through the more important parts. If you guys want to hear the other stories that I left out, be sure to let me know in the comment section and I will make a follow-up video. So in those days, my life was very busy. I never really had a dull moment. I was always going from point A to point B, hustling. You know, we were gigging or practicing for the gigs, and I'd be juggling my other side jobs. I was always trying to just make a little extra money, you know? Then one day, everything changed for the better. I got a phone call from the owner of the music store that I knew. And he was like, hey, my workers quit on me. I don't have anyone to rely on. I need somebody down here like 5 to 6 days a week, ASAP. And that definitely changed my life forever. I've been working at that same job for the last 8 or 9 years now, which is crazy to think, because it feels like just yesterday when I started. So that's it, guys. That's my story. That's how I ended up where I am. That's how I ended up who I am. And that's why I do what I do. I started YouTube as something for me, you know, something that I always wanted to do. I always wanted to have a YouTube. I always wanted to make music. I always wanted to share my music and connect with people. But I never really had the chance or the time or the money or the opportunity to do that. And so, you know, when COVID happened, I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to start taking YouTube seriously. I'm going to do it. And well, here we are now.